some people aren't. But I wanted to start with just a statistic because I'm a weirdo. I wanted to share my screen and then open up discussion with you about this number right here. So this is year to date. Can you guys see my screen okay? Year to date, what new construction is up 29%. In MLS, we know there's a crap ton of houses that they don't even put in MLS. And then resale is up 9.7%. And then so that's it. When we've been following this, we do market of the moment every month, and we've been following new construction. It's been like this since November, December of last year. It just keeps creeping up, 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 up. So we're talking about low inventory while everyone's jumping on the new construction bandwagon. So I wanted to just give that in context, like us in the resale world, or we've got to kind of get our eye on the real prize, which is new construction, because a lot of those sales, honestly, they're not using realtors. They're walking straight into the model, and the builder is just getting the transaction. And then I've always said for a long time, where are those resales? They're probably listing their house with somebody because they're walking into a new construction model house, falling in love with that dream house, and then they have to sell there. So what we're not seeing is the double dipper there, where new construction is up 29%. Let's just round up. Resale's up 10. So I want to have a discussion with you guys. You guys are the experts on the field. Like, and this is a open discussion. There's nobody on a panel per se. So open up, we might have to talk over each other a little bit, but what are some of your guys' experience? Who's got some new construction under contract in kind of a shortened version of like what your experience is? I'm going to take notes.
Well, I will jump in. I had one that worked out really nicely because the client is actually coming from out of state. And so the new construction, it's buying directly from the builder. But I was able to do a virtual showing of essentially the framework that's up there now. And so I went and did a walkthrough for them, and they could sort of see the floor plan, but they like the idea of being able to pick out the finishes still, especially since they're coming from out of area. So they were like, cool, that floor plan looks good. We love the lot. And we essentially put a first right. You got a question?
No, and that's a smaller builder. He builds like 3 to 4 homes. Is you
a year?
Your house, right?
Yep. He built the house that I'm in now.
Can we write that?
His name is David, but his company is Renovate LLC, I think. His wife is
your house, or are you going to burn your house down?
No, I like my house. Yeah, I like my house.
Okay.
So it's renovation, but drop the last N. So renovatio.
And his name is John?
David.
Oh, David.
And then JINNETT is the last name, and Christina with a K is his wife, who's the agent.
Cool. So
yeah, and they've been great because it's been able to kind of piecemeal a bunch of moving parts. So essentially, when the client comes down to see the house, which we are contingent on, we basically did a first right for 3 weeks, but instead of contingent on selling a house, it was contingent on them coming and seeing it in person.
Okay.
But it was unique because it came and worked out, because when they come down to see it, they'll also be able to then visualize what they want to change or not change. Gotcha. And then we'll ratify. But we're essentially pending at this point because they're coming this week. So it's been a cool process, though.
Okay, cool. David, I think you have some experience too. You want to share that? And Brandon Lewis is on here. Hey, buddy.
Yeah, I've got right now 5 new constructions under contract, and they're mostly the small builders.
Oh, good. That's interesting.
It's been fascinating. Most of the time we haven't really sought them out, but just there's one example. I had showing a house in a neighborhood in Chesterfield off of Route 1, and we just happened to see this really nice looking house. Walked over to it and ended up catching up with the builder that way. So it's like somebody I'd never heard of before.
Who is that builder?
I'm trying to remember his name now. He's such a small builder.
That's okay. You can tell
it's really. I'll look up for you in a second. I was actually trying to remember because he's a really. It's a nice. He builds like 5 or 6 houses a year kind of guy. You know.
Cool.
But we were lucky enough to actually run into the buyer of this one house we had noticed, and she let us look through the house. It was just an amazing experience. It's like, you know, nothing planned about it, right? The next thing I know, we're writing a contract. So, and, you know, then there's, you know, I've got one with Legault, which has been difficult to say the least.
I've had clients with Legault. That's a. I'm chasing my little puppy dog here. Legault's a great builder, and they have a good system in place too. Like everything's got a process to it. So
it does, and you know, it's funny. It's amazing how structured, and I guess you have to. You know, as you get bigger, you know, you have to get your act together, right? So the bigger builders seem to be very structured in the way they do things, and it's going to be a great house when it gets finished. It's just. It's been an interesting experience. It's probably one of the most difficult transactions I've done, and then not, you know, for various reasons. It's not, you know, there's no one thing. It's just relatively uneducated clients. It was actually the first one that I wrote. It's been because of where they built our building. It wasn't even, the roads weren't even in, so we've waited a long time. It's been like a year already. So that's been an interesting experience. And then my folks, of course, had to live in temporary housing while that's getting finished. So, yeah, I mean, it's just, you know, what comes right down to is, you know, everybody's got it. Some of these guys are very much, you know, good old boys who just, you know, they write a contract, but it's very loose, right? And then there's some that are like, everything's got to be documented and addendum, and somewhere in between those two. So it's been amazing.
I think that's, well, you hit the nail on the head. Like some it's like factory built, where their contracts and their process and their systems are like, this is your supervisor, this is the contract. And then some, not that it's not derogatory anyway, it's like they literally are doing it out of the back of their pickup truck, and you're like, okay, like there's some of it's loose, some of it's tight. So, and you've had some experience in new construction lately too, right?
Yes, so I just closed one, and then I have 2 going on now. And I gotta say, the smaller builders I'm enjoying more. I'm just more impressed with. So the one that just closed, I can't remember, I think it's Rock River or Rock Creek.
River Rock. Oh, they have cool houses too.
Matt Farnham is his name.
Yeah. River Rock. They have they do like more craftsman style. Like they do a lot of wood art. Yeah. I follow them.
I was really impressed with him. He did a lot of nice extras. So my clients came in and the house was like 6 weeks out from being done. So they didn't really make any changes.
River Rock Homes is what it's called.
So I was really impressed with them. And then there was a lot of like small things. They did a walkthrough before closing, and there was a lot of small things, but they wanted to close. My clients wanted to close, and he got every dang one of those things finished like within a week. So I was super impressed. Matt Farnham was the builder. He's also an agent, but I think he just builds houses. Now, if you brought him a lot and said, I want you to build me a house, he's not going to do that. He basically finds the land and puts the house up and then lists it as a spec house.
But I've personally seen like his stuff when he says it's land, it's not a crappy lot. It's a cool, well done. He's very particular about his lot.
And then I just had clients go under contract with Boone, so I don't really have any opinion on that yet.
What neighborhood, Ann?
In Kinlock Villas.
Yeah.
Okay. I know a few people over at Boone, so if you need help with anything, one of them is a VP over there. So I've done yeah, I think that's actually one of the ones I've talked to.
I've had a couple transactions with them, and even a client as well had one.
I had a good friend work there for like 10 years, but he just left. So
one thing that I was impressed with on them is they do not have that escalation clause that we keep hearing about in their contracts. I knew to ask about that ahead of time, and I got the contract and I looked at it. I did not see it.
So
And
let's
then-
talk about that for a minute. So
Okay.
in a lot of the new construction contracts, and we got lenders here, so you can help us out too. Like we are used to in resale, like you pay $350, ratify a contract $350. New construction commonly has a clause in there that says, yeah, you're buying it for $350 today, but if anything in the world changes, we can increase that price. Is that correct? I just dumbed that down, but is that correct? And like, is that basically the paragraph? That's right.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
On the lending world, I know I got both Brandons here, and like, how does that work on lending? How do you guys, when you see a contract like that, that's like, hey, this is $350, you guys are pulling it into your underwriting system, and how does that work? I'm curious for pre-call reasons, for trying to get it to the finish line. Just dropped $30,000. Right, freaking. I'm
For
sorry.
new construction.
New construction.
Yeah, so like when you pinned, and then, I mean, I guess in general it would go up with options too, but now with the subject to escalation clause, it's gonna go up, just a matter of how much.
Yeah, you treat it pretty much the same as a rising rate environment, right? We've got to prepare for the rates rising. Can they still afford that home if the rates go up a half a point? So
you kind of leave a little fluff in there, like you try to gauge. You try to overqualify. Okay.
Yeah.
I just thought that was
push in there that we know they're going to give the builder a peace of mind.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, and I just thought that was a
That's
good
okay. Yeah.
nugget, because I've had many agents where they're like calling me going, my buyer has to pay $23,000 more for this house and we're closing in 2 weeks. I'm like, yeah, or you don't, or you get out of it. That's what's, and the appraisal and everything you paid for is out the window. So.
And then the other thing with Boone that I thought was interesting, I had not had this experience before. You have to put down 10% and it's non-refundable. They don't require you to get pre-qualified. So my clients are deciding between cash or a mortgage. And I said, okay, I was asking the site agent, they're deciding, they don't know what they were going to do. She's like, it doesn't matter. We don't need to know that right now because they're putting down $70,000. It's non-refundable. And I was like, okay.
How are your buyers reacting to that? Like, they were like, sure, here's my money, or what?
Well, they were okay with that because they have a house that they're selling, and
okay.
they have funds, they have money, they are okay with that.
But I think that's important if you're prepping someone on getting into the experience, to say, hey, this is not like a standard $1,000 EMD experience here.
Right. So like, if you're not going to get that with Main Street. So,
right.
Or if somebody's buying a $350,000 new construction versus $750, you need to have different conversations with them.
Did they give you a timeline?
Oh,
yes.
Sorry. Did they give
February.
you a timeline? Yeah, because that was a big question that I had kind of for everybody. Was I talked to Main Street Homes and they said they're pretty much looking at 9 to 10 months from contract to completion right now.
Wow.
And they said that's just kind of across the board because the demand and material and the number of homes they're having to build, they're just backlogged. And my first thought was, if this is Main Street Homes, what is everybody else doing too? Because they're obviously one of the bigger and probably better builders in the area. They have a pretty good operation over there. But the ones that are above that and below that, I'm curious to see, because I can't imagine anybody being much quicker.
And that's the other thing, is there's not a hard fast, there's no hard fast close date in our residential resale ones, but they reserve the time to, I think most contracts are said up to 12 months, and weather permitting and all this, it's very fluffy when you're really going to move in. So.
Right. So then you bring in the whole timeline question on the buyer side of a different expectation. Not only can your price go up, but now you're looking at 9 to 12 months from now before you're moving in.
Yeah. So how do you frame that question when, okay, so they're like, they own a house, you need to list it to sell it. Maybe it's not contingent because they have cash flow to do it. Like, and David, you mentioned that like they're homeless and now they're living in like, how do you transition that? Because I think new construction is a great option, but that does freak people out. Nobody wants to be homeless. So what are you coaching your clients to do? Like when the build time's 9 to 10 months, maybe, It could be 11 to 12. And then how do you sequence the listing in that? What's your guys' advice? David, maybe, is that something you've experienced?
Well, I mean, I have that pretty much that situation going on right now. I've got a client who's they literally qualified as non-contingent, without having to sell their place. So they're building one with New Kent, NK Homes. And we're just having to, I'm constantly with the builder or with the builder's rep saying, what's the timeline look like today? Because, with material shortages and stuff, that's always an issue. I mean, right. I'm chomping on the bit to put their place on the market, but we don't want to do too fast because we don't want to, what do you do when you have a buyer? They want to take possession. So that timing is really critical, right?
Right.
I mean, we're basically, I'm coaching them, 60 to 90 days. 60 days probably today's market is when we want to go on market for their place.
So you just kind of have to just keep a pulse on what the heck. Okay.
Yeah, we have to keep a pulse on it. And, they're getting the house ready for sale. We'll probably do pictures and get all the stuff staged so that we can just, snap our fingers and
pull the trigger.
It, right?
And is your people the same way? Like they need to sell too? I mean, they don't need to, but they're going to sell?
Who, me?
Yeah, Ann. Yeah.
So they live in Martinsville, so I'm not involved in selling that. But their market there is good, and they said this is the first time in a long time that it has been strong because it's rural, it's a part of Virginia. And so they decided they were going to go ahead and list. They're going on vacation, and they wanted to get it on the market while they were gone. And they actually had 2 offers before they even went on the market in Martinsville. So they were going to take one of those, but because they thought, okay, it's better to have 2. What's that saying? 2 birds in the hand or whatever.
I don't know. I know what you're saying. Some old wise realtor probably said. Oh.
So they were jumping on that, and I'm going to help them find temporary housing here if they decide to do that, or they may decide to do temporary housing in Martinsville. So
can I ask where you guys are finding temporary housing? Because I find that fascinating.
Well, or just housing in general.
They want furnished. And my Ann Pershing did temporary housing. She did corporate housing furnished, and she's a big fan of that. So she connected me.
There's a market for it, for sure.
I was gonna say that's a business somebody needs to be in quickly.
Well, and that's what I was gonna say is the rent market is just as crazy as our market, regardless of term. And so that's where we're running into a bit of an issue because the rent back situation where if you sell and then rent it back from the buyer is limited for lending purposes and compliance. Yeah, exactly. So we're struggling with that timeline a little bit too. Kind of to David's point, you have sellers that are ready to try to catch this market. They're like, well, we want to create the bidding war on our home. We keep losing out on the other end. But it's the timeline thing. So it brings back up the off market conversation too. Trying to match make with that inventory.
Absolutely. So one of the questions I had is I built personally 3 houses, but 2 of them we actually built not ourselves, but we hired a builder and we did what we call what lending world calls construction to perm loan. Do you guys know what that is? So the one thing is some lenders obviously carry the loan themselves and then you close like a traditional resale. But do you guys have clients that are doing it like that construction to perm with the draws? And then I wanted to get some insight into the lenders because that's a little bit of a different experience than a Main Street, here's your money and just close at the end of 9 months. We like footers, foundation. We did all of those cycles, which
almost every buyer that I have has asked me about that. And then I tell them how expensive it is and they change their mind. They mainly like the reserves or the cash up front.
Do you think it's more expensive or is it perspective on that?
In terms of doing a construction to perm to just traditional financing?
Yeah, versus traditional, like the builder carries it all.
Yeah. Great question. I was actually talking with a builder the other week for a client, and we were talking about, do you have the ability to build on your line of credit and close at traditional financing, or do you prefer the construction to perm loan?
Right.
Nice guy, we were talking back and forth over that, and he's fine either way. He says, ultimately, if we go construction to perm, and this was about a $500,000 price point, it was a $9,800 higher expense markup in the sales price for him to do everything.
So, and that was for him carrying the construction on himself.
Correct. Yep. For him to
That's a good question.
buy the land, to get the permits, do all that.
So
Versus going through the draw process.
It would probably slightly contradict also what you're saying is like it's actually.
I was gonna say that's a good question. Yeah, I have more of the folks that are like, "What if we bought?"
It's a little pain in the ass. Like it's like you have to go to the bank and you have to get the draws. You have to do the bank. They have to do the inspections to make sure all that stuff. And depending on, is it still normally 4 draws or sometimes maybe 6? I don't know what the breakdown is, but
I have people that ask.
Brandon, why do you think it's so different, such a high difference? I mean, I don't know if you went that deep with them. Why is it such a big difference? And that's almost 10 grand. Why do you think there's such a big spread between him carrying it versus the consumer carrying it?
Well, he's going to cover his finance charges, so he's going to treat that kind of like a draw, or
he does,
from his own personal line of credit to build that home. So he's definitely building in the financing costs there, permit expenses, things like that. Now, if you look at doing a construction to perm loan, especially if you do a 2-time, which is the standard pretty much right now, you're looking at twice the closing costs. Lenders a lot of times will pay the second one, but you are looking at higher expense for the client, I feel, versus the builder. So I would always say traditional financing at the end of the day.
Interesting.
Plus, Brandon, correct me if I'm wrong. I think the other Brandon and I have had this conversation too. If the client's going to buy the land, it creates a financing issue in and of itself because of the reserve requirements, et cetera. And I think that's that first close. That's usually what I try to explain to people is like, it's even if you're not spending the money, if it's sitting in your reserves, it's still more expensive because if you don't have that cash, maybe you can qualify for the traditional financing route. And a lot of people now, I blame HGTV, are saying, well, what if I bought land and then I just built one of those shipping container homes, or I built whatever I wanted on it? And I'm like, that's not how real life works. And so then it's a whole different conversation.
Caitlin, you're shaking your head. What have you had experience with that?
My family is all about HGTV. And we, being Christoph and my husband and I, knowing the world and HGTV life don't really ever match up. So the shipping container, I just had love people having that idea because you can't just literally take it off the boat and put it on the land. You got to sandblast it. You got to get all that paint off. You got to make it so you can actually breathe inside of that container every day. So it's just some people you got to drill through that solid metal. It's not cheap. So a lot of people don't take that into consideration.
That's interesting. I never even thought about any of that. But
yeah, I mean, you got to, and it's a huge piece that you got to get a crane to drop somewhere and stack and maneuver, and cranes per the hour are not cheap.
Okay. I don't know that I would ever want to live in a shipping container, but good for them.
More permitting issues too.
Yeah, deed restrictions and HOAs or whatever, you've got to be out there. So
it's like the new take on manufactured homes, I guess, is what they're trying to accomplish, but it's
So another question I had for you guys is like, you meet this buyer, you kind of go under the resale umbrella as the assumption, and then they see new construction or you suggest new construction. What do you do with like the preliminary, like when you're doing that like buyer consultation, or like right when do you bring up new construction or you don't? Because I've always heard, I'll be honest, I'll go through that and they're like, oh, do you want new construction? They're like, no, I don't want new construction. So then I used to just skip that section because I'm like, oh, well, they don't want new construction. I'm not going to cover that. It's boring and it's irrelevant. And then interestingly enough, then they're the ones hanging out at a model house and you're like, what the hell? You said you didn't want new construction, right? So how do you guys prep your buyer for new construction when they say, oh, I don't want new construction, or inventory is low and they're kind of leaning that way? What are you guys doing in that process?
Well,
be good.
Sorry.
Catherine, do you have anything? I'm curious. No, you don't cover it? Okay.
Sorry, I was distracted.
Do you cover anything new construction in your buyer consult, or you don't?
It depends on the client. I mean, we've got a lot of people who are moving here from out of town, so they kind of want to look at both.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Dave, go ahead. Sure.
Yeah, well, I've got 2 clients that started out doing looking at resales, and of course, it's about experience, right? I'm sure most of you guys have the same experience I do. It's like you show them a few houses, and they finally start understanding what works for them, right? Or what doesn't work for them, and then you hear the stories about the market, and so yeah, I mean, initially I usually mention in the beginning, and then after looking at a few houses and a few frustrations, I loop back around to it. Are you still not interested, or is it off the table still, kind of thing? And I've had a couple convert from wanting to do resale to do new construction because the experience of going through that is just they get worn down by it quickly, and that's why I've got 5.
Yeah. Anybody else cover it differently? Because I think we need to make sure we are covering it in, like, even when they're like, no, I don't want new construction, like. And I even joke, I'm like, all right, so like, if your car randomly goes into a new construction neighborhood, which I'm sure will never happen, let me just cover this anyway, because AKA it happens almost every time.
So I've transformed mine to, I've really started trying to give 3 options, whether it's a buyer consult or a seller consult. Ironically, there's a gas pump analogy in there somewhere, but we don't need to talk about gas right now. But the 3 types for buyers are: you can buy a piece of land and build your own home, what we were just talking about. You can buy a new home directly from the builder, or you can buy a resale home from a owner. And so we kind of touch on those 3 options and then let them sort of explore which one of those 3 they really want to talk about. And then answer questions from there. So it allows me to be a lot more Q&A and get to know them in the beginning. A lot of times these are friends of mine too. So it's kind of, hey, let's revisit this home buying thing, or they're selling and buying. So it allows me to say, like, how much research have you done, or how much do you remember from the last time we spoke? Yeah. And so by saying, like, hey, and then it also leads into that, well, that's the most expensive route. That's the next expensive route. And that's the, I don't want to say cheaper route because it's not cheap right now, but the least expensive of the 3. And so then we set the expectations from there.
Well, and so that's a good question. Like, do you guys see that new construction is less expensive, more expensive, affordable versus resale? Like, when you're taking the same buyer and flipping them from a resale to new construction, are they spending about the same money? Are they spending way, way more? I'm pulling up the data to see if
price point. Yeah, I think, I mean, once you start getting into that 4 or 5 range, I'm seeing that it's about the same right now. Now, considering the escalation clause, it obviously could change depending on the builder. But for example, I mean, a base price in the mid 4s is going to end up at around the same price point probably as where it is with multiple offers now anyways.
Yeah, so I was looking at this, it's almost, if this doesn't show crazy pricing. So like, this is new construction, average sales price is $397 right now for year to date, up 7%. And then resale is up $327, up 14%. So it actually showing resales pricing is increasing faster at 14% versus new construction is at 7%. Now they're readjusting their prices, they just did. And they're going to continue to do so. But
because wasn't that negative like a month or 2 ago?
Mm-hmm. What?
On our mastermind? So they're catching up.
They're trying to catch up. Yeah, we talked about that a couple months ago. Like, new construction, they were behind. Honestly, they should have raised their prices probably 3 months ago because they were way undervaluing where the resale market was. But I think it's just important to tell your buyers, because for some reason we think like a car, a new car is $60,000, a used car for 4, 5, 6 years is $30,000, right? We have this mindset that new is more expensive, when really in reality it may not be. Or, and again, lending, if you're comparing payments, it's $200 more a month in payment, but number one, you're getting new construction versus resale, and you're getting what you want versus a dented can. You know what I mean? Because in resale world, you're not getting repairs. You're not getting home inspections they're not fixing everything. So it's just interesting to me. We're paying resale prices for a used house that's as is. You can do a home inspection, but good luck with whatever's wrong with it. Or you can go new construction where it has a warranty with it. It has a punch list. It has all the new, like, that's why you're seeing the trend there. And I think real estate, we're not agents. We're not telling that story well enough, in my opinion. So that kind of led to my next question is like, what can we do as an industry or as a community? Like, how do we tell the story that we sell new construction? Like, you don't have to go to the builder direct. We can be your advocate. We can really help you through the transaction. What are you guys doing to kind of spread the word about your skills and your value in the new construction space with your future clients, not your current ones? Like, how are you attracting new leads?
So
I think it's, go Amy.
So what I do is anytime I'm having a conversation at all about a buyer consult and we discuss building, a lot of times I'll just work into, hey, I know that a lot of times when people are out on the weekends, they'll step into a model home, they'll be approached by a sales rep, they'll be approached by, a site agent, and they'll often, try and take the agent out of the equation. And the first thing I do is I say to them, you want to have representation, because here is the truth. If suddenly you're represented by the builder or the company that's doing the build and something goes wrong, who do you have to advocate for you? You need someone in your corner. So that is where I lay the groundwork all the time. I said, and I said, not to say that you're not going to get a nice home and everything, but bottom line, I'm here to advocate for you if something goes wrong. And that's where I start, because they do it all the time. Oh, I walked into Craftmasters and next thing you know, they have a contract. Oh, I didn't give them your name. Oh, should I have done that? Well, yeah. And I have had multiple people call me after they've gone under contract without me and said, can you help me get out of this? And prime example. And I know that's a little bit off from the question, but at the same time.
No, I think that's a good point, because I think that's, again, part of the story. We've got to be able to, I don't think we want to ever use fear tactics to recruit or to lead generate. I hate that whole concept, but I think they need to be aware. Like, I always joke, like, hey, if you're being accused of murder, like there's two sides of the courtroom. You want somebody on your side to be able to defend you, right? So to be that kind of dramatic. So I think that's a huge point. And I think the problem is everything's great until it's not. Like, until
right.
If you ordered something and it's not installed correctly, or a couple of you guys said there's a good experience, or I think it was Austin, where they came and fixed everything pretty quickly. Well, I've had some where the builders, that 12-month warranty, they were not Johnny on the spot fixing items on the house. So I was the agent going, we're at 10 months. You haven't fixed anything on the punch list. Don't make me go into DPOR world to get fixed.
And that's what I was about to say, is I think it all starts with telling the stories, both good and bad. And there's a way you can frame it with what you just said, is if you have to step in as an agent. I mean, my plumber was calling me. He built a house from an agent, so to speak. The agent's involved with the builder. Not going to name companies, but they built the house, and it's 10 months later and they still haven't even completed the backyard. Like, they have no back deck or anything in the back of their house, and it's 10 months later, and he's calling me like, what do I do? And I'm like, who's your agent? And he goes, I didn't use one. I was like, call DPOR. But it's telling that story. Yeah. As, hey, not necessarily this guy should have used an agent, but here's one of the things that an agent can help you with, like you just said. And sharing that more often. I think that there's a lot right now of what do agents get paid to do, and we really need to be kind of showing our work. And that's one thing that we can really do behind the scenes, but in a positive light.
I think that's huge right now. I mean, I think houses are selling in 2 days. For sale by owners are selling faster than ever, higher percentages, higher amounts, new construction's higher. What it's doing, if we're not careful, is it's detaching us from the center of the transaction. So, and when it's lack of value, it's price. So they're like, well, why am I going to pay Drew or Austin or David a commission when they don't do anything, right? So I think we've got to be really careful about, especially in new construction, like showing telling those stories, not using people's names. We don't want to be derogatory in that way, but we want to say, hey, doing that more often. We need to be telling those stories because the salesperson at the model house, they're doing their job. They're selling the house and they're not doing anything illegal, immoral, unethical. That's what their job and responsibility is. And when I was a rep, I cut my first 2 years in real estate was in a sales model. I sold the crap out of some houses. And honestly, I didn't need real estate agents. In fact, being honest, y'all got in my way sometimes. I'm like, just go sit over there. I'll pay your money. Let me just take this buyer and get it done, right? So I think we got to be careful about that balance of that relationship. So that kind of leads me to my next. How involved are you in the transaction? So you go under contract with your buyer. Like, what are you guys doing for the 9 months? Say it's taking that long to build. Like, what are you doing to show value through that whole incubation period? Anybody?
That's a big, it depends. So I've had clients that wanted me there for every single aspect of it, even to the point where sometimes there's certain builders that have on the contract which things real estate agents aren't allowed to come to. But I've had clients who wanted me literally there for when they were picking out toggle switches, and then others who check in. But I say, this is my level of service. I'm here for you. I can attend these meetings with you. I can, just so they know that they have the support, because some people are so like, they can't help, they need help making a decision, but they also like, I'm trying to build a rapport with the builder or the project manager or the site person, just so that if there are problems, that I can advocate for my client easier. So that is the one thing I like, going to those things so I can make connections. I had a bad experience with a client last year with a production builder, and yesterday they sent me pictures of water pouring out of the foundation, and evidently like all the streets on the house have water pouring out of the foundation, and like it was built on natural springs. Like, I don't know. Yeah. So
a literal river under your house.
Yeah. Yes. But so they were moving from out of state, and I literally was out there once a week, walking the lot for them, taking pictures, that sort of thing. And it got to the point where, like the project manager knew my car. He was like, oh God, Andy here. But at the same point, like, that's what they needed. Like that builder clearly needed that. So I just kind of offer all my services, and then I let them decide which ones.
Gotcha. So. Anybody do anything differently or similar?
I'm similar. I do the same thing. I offer to be available for whatever they want. If they're not comfortable with me going and picking countertops and stuff, then I don't want to do that if they're not comfortable with that. And honestly, I kind of don't want to do that anyway.
Yeah.
But I find that I am most valuable towards the end of the process, when there's problems. Like I had clients that were at the beginning of the year closed with H.H. Hunt, and there was a debacle with the appraisal. And so I didn't really do anything except make phone calls. And I was like the squeaky wheel that got the grease. And I was just constantly asking questions and helping to try and move the needle forward in it. And so I think that for me, my value is towards the end of the process, facilitating the home inspection, the final walkthrough, making sure things are getting done, just at that phase of the process.
Well, Amy and I, in a combination, like one of the things I found also is if I was involved like in the selection process, sometimes the buyer would be choosing things that were very interesting, like color choices and like selection choices. And I would just always say, like, eventually you're going to have to resell this house. Like, it's, yes, the custom house, but you're putting really interesting cabinets, or you're putting really interesting light fixtures in here. And, hopefully you live in this house for 30 years, but if you're only in here for 7 years and I think it's interesting with the trends of new construction. It's kind of like fashion. Like, we're seeing a lot of these cool tiles in the floors, and we're like, what happens when that trend goes away? Now I have a weird funky tile and I have shiplap on my walls in 75 places. Like, how do you guys navigate? Because it's so trendy. New construction is so trendy, right? And they go into these model houses like brass versus chrome, and now it's blue cabinets versus cherry cabinets. Like, there's really a major shift in how are you, I mean, do you guys let them just pick what they want because it's their money? Or are you coaching them to like, hey, for resale value, this could change. Like the 80s, what we wore in the 80s is, well, it's coming back, but what we wore in the 90s or 2000s is not what we wear today. How do you guys navigate that?
So I try and have a conversation with them and say, hey, I don't know how long you plan to be in this house. Are you interested in knowing what adds value to a house and what doesn't, and what could be too trendy? Like, I have that conversation. Like, I know you want to love your house and you're going to live in it, but there's definitely some decisions like where you put the money that will have a greater return on your investment. So, you know, because a lot of times people are like, oh, the mudroom, let's make the mudroom the most amazing thing ever. Okay, no. You need to make the kitchen and the master, you know, bath the most amazing thing ever. So a lot of times we'll just kind of talk about the value of a house and to remember that, so you don't, you know, lose money in return. Because if you do this really niche thing, you're going to lose money when you go to resell it, because everybody's going to go, well, I'm going to have to jackhammer that wall out because they did stamped concrete, the, you know, fireplace.
Yeah. Well, that kind of gave me an insight, like exterior patio landscaping that like started a trend, and now I feel like everybody has a fire pit in their backyard. Like, I would see them doing like granite countertops and huge gas grills and all this stuff in the backyard, spending $100,000 in an upgrade in a, like, has that, and maybe the lenders can help, like, has that absorbed into appraisals a little bit more? Because when they were first doing that, I'm like, I hope you love that pool and that whole backyard thing, because there's no way for resale I can get another $100,000 out of that backyard stuff.
To your point, Drew, Shell removed it from their options for a while. Like, you couldn't like the whole exterior was basically its own contract. Because people were getting so crazy. They were like, here's who we use, good luck. And so it was basically a deck or a patio, and that was it, at least over in Rivermill. And because it was getting so crazy, and people were spending upwards of $100,000 outside the home, and it was causing all sorts of appraisal issues. There were other issues at hand for appraisal issues over there, but that was one of the main reasons. So yeah, I'd be interested to get the lender's perspective on that affecting prices, the options and upgrades, especially with stuff like that.
Well, I can share that I just actually talked to an appraiser last week about this, because I have a client who lives in Halsley and sent me plans for an $85,000 outdoor kitchen and fire pit. And she's like, can you add the value to this? And I said, it is the value just like a pool. It's to that individual buyer. I said, so I have to comp it against other houses in Halsley that have the same exact thing. And I said, and during COVID, yeah, it's a tremendous value. But in 5 years, when everybody's forgotten about COVID and the need to be, well, I hope they have, and they're outside, you know, so I told her, I was like, it is on your goal. Like, there is no return on the investment. And the appraiser said that. He's like, there are things that people do in their homes because they love it, and there's no way to add a value to it. So
on the lending side, Riley, what is your opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, the hardest part with that is, I mean, Amy and Austin hit it on the head, is finding comps. And, you know, if you got somebody putting in an $85,000 kitchen in their backyard, who else in that neighborhood has it? Yeah. Who else in that vicinity, in that distance requirement, has something similar to where I can compare it? So it's really tough to appraise that and show its true value compared to the rest of the market.
Yeah. Brandon, Lewis, what about you? What do you think? Is there an opinion on that?
No, I agree 100%. You know, we did a lunch and learn the other week with an appraiser, and that's one of the big questions that came up. And I asked him the same question a year ago at the same process, but I was asking him, you know, neighborhood with a community pool, let's say Halsley, Summer Lake, whatever it might be. When that homeowner goes and builds a pool in the backyard, you know, that appraiser was stating not adding tremendous value. You've got a great pool down the
you go down the block and it's a huge, like Disney World pool over there.
Right.
Yep. Now, as more and more people start to build these pools, you know, it's kind of changed over COVID now. So it is becoming more convenient. He was saying people definitely want to purchase the home with them, but you're not necessarily seeing the value. So, like Brandon said, it's the comps. If the neighborhood has a lot of comparable homes in the area, you'll be fine. If you're that one sticking out with that, $75,000 bluestone patio, you're not going to get that value for it.
Yeah, and I think we just have to keep reciting that to them. Like, hey, it's your money, but you got to realize this is not going to add value. And we have, because I would be, of course, they call you 5 years, say, I want to sell. And then they bought their house for 500, spent 100 and land. So they're like, I want, 600 grand. And you're like, well, guess what? It's not worth that. So,
I feel like we, even in this current market, we still see that a little bit. People
oh,
think,
yeah.
Man, you don't understand how much I put into this house. I'm like, well, you don't understand how much it's actually value.
I always explain it in a listing appointment, like marketing value versus real value. Like I can use it as a really cool carrot to like get somebody off the couch to go look at your house. Like, hey, look at this refreshing, beautiful pool. Hey, relax in your backyard and the fire pit. Like that's a marketing thing, but it doesn't mean they're going to pay more money. They may get off their butt and rack offer faster, but they're not going to give you 100 grand more for it.
I saw a listing, it was probably 2 or 3 weeks ago now at this point, and it was a newer home that was being sold now recently, but they had a golf simulator in the garage, and I shared a picture of it.
That.
Yeah, it got more interaction and commenting than anything. Everybody was like, "Oh my God, is this yours?" I was like, "I don't even have a garage. No, it's not mine." Yeah. But at the same time,
converted your garage to like that. Like yeah.
Right. But at the same time, that house still hasn't sold. It's still for sale in the MLS. So I was like, it's exactly to our point is I'm like, that's super cool and eye catching. And it might get a lot of people to go look at it. But if the house is overpriced, which it is, it's not going to matter. And so it's kind of interesting to see that, like, that's a prime example. I wish I had the street address to give everybody, but
I remember you posting it. One last question I had, I think there is, how do you find new construction? For some reason, I felt like there was an app that everybody's using that's a local. You guys know anything about this app where you can?
Does HBAR have an app?
Were you the one telling me about the app? You're shaking your head.
Jerry told me about it, Jerry Archer, but
what is it called?
I don't know what it is.
Oh man, I was hoping you guys. So there's evidently an app that covers all new construction in Richmond, because my question is, how in the heck do you keep up with every new subdivision popping up, every new piece of dirt being pushed? Because I think that's our biggest value is like, we can set our people up on, we need that app. Yes, I know. I don't know. I'll find it. I was hoping you guys, but we set up resale, we set up a portal and resales go to our buyers, right? That's what I call the easy button. New construction, in my opinion, there's no easy button for new construction because number one, they don't put everything in MLS. Plus there's new stuff coming out the pike. New Home Source is the app. All right, let me download this app. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I looked back on my messages with Jerry and it said New Home Source.
Home Source. Working.
It's like a little.
It looks like a little house beaming up with light or something. Kind of looks like a really messed up Walmart logo.
Yeah. Great, another app with a house on it. Can't wait to keep track of that one.
I think that's important.
Like Walmart.
Real original.
To like show that to your buyers or at least have access to it, because we have all these, they're gonna randomly go, oh yeah, look at this. This is what I'm talking about. New Home Source, good app. Because I think we need to be really conscious of that. And I think that's stuff that we need to be posting on social media. Like, hey, check out this new construction subdivision, take an entrance sign or take a picture. Like, I would say I do not see enough real estate agents posting about new construction. They post, hey, I helped someone buy a house and it's done and it's finished and they're standing at the front door with their sold sign, but that's not, like, I want to see the whole process. So my answer to my own question is, like, if we're really seeing huge increases in new construction, we know social media and our business has a huge influence on how people perceive things. That's just our new channel, or well, not new, it's our channel of communication with our consumers. How many social media posts are you putting about new construction? David and I talked about, like, doing a Facebook Live while you're doing, you know, when, like Amy said, when she was checking out, like, hey, I'm just checking on my client's new construction build. I go out here every week to just make sure things are going smoothly, blah, 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 blah. Hey, today I'm at the selection center. We just picked out this amazing kitchen, but we want to make sure, yes, it's trendy, but it is also good for resale in the future. Like telling that story that you're completely in the process, not waiting till the end and just snapping that one photo of congratulations, you sold a house at the end, because there's a lot of work between that 9 and 10 months and different things like that. So that's what I think we need to definitely have a focus, or houses are going to sell without us. And unfortunately, our buyers potentially will buy houses without us too, you know? So anything else that you guys want to kind of mastermind, have conversation on new construction? I think we covered, like, I have so many notes I can't even. Catherine, you had a question?
I had one quick question about inspections along the way. I know we had a mastermind at our office, and there's an inspector in town who's offering like a package deal where he goes in at framing, then I think I forget what it was, pre-drywall, oh no, right at the end, and then at 10 or 11 months. Is that, like, who's doing that? What's the deal?
I think Burgess offers that.
Burgess, yeah, it was Burgess.
Yeah, Burgess is good with that.
I use Capital Home Inspections for my inspections. I have not done that with them. I did just learn about Burgess, and I thought that was very interesting. And the 3 inspections, I think the cost is not like a full inspection for each one. But I usually use Capital, and they do it before the punch list walkthrough. And then I explain to my clients that you can do it now before punch list walkthrough, or you can do it at your 1 year, or you could do both. It depends on what you want to spend. I have found that they are beneficial before the punch list walkthrough, because the inspector has found things that I'm not smart enough to find, like issues with a crack in a window, like in a tiny corner that my eyes would not have seen, my old lady eyes would not have seen.
Yeah, I agree. And don't rely on just like the county inspection. Not that I don't think they do a great job, but they're doing a lot of them. I personally, when I did new construction, I knew a builder hadn't finished something, and I was like, they're going to get flagged from the county because they did. And they were like, oh, everything's perfect. I'm like, that is not true. So the county just kind of rolls through. They do, I guess, the best they can, but when they're doing their county inspections to get the CO, certificate of occupancy, like, you think that like everything's all tied in a bow, but they miss things. Just they're human just like us. But so I think you have to do it. I mean, in my opinion, have to do home inspection for new construction. But I love this new app. Like, literally.
Well, you get another point of that too.
All the builders on there.
Oh, that is cool. Yeah. I was just going to say another point with the home inspection thing too is you get that with building. I think we touched on that earlier, but a lot of times right now you're not getting that with resale and the bidding wars. But you're a lot more likely to get a home inspection with the new construction, and the warranty is required by law for a year. So,
well, I think that warranties for a year, people need to understand that too. Like, it's different than a home warranty. Like, if you get it from, your local, like, there's structural mechanical defects, you're going to get that corrected, right? So even if you're paying more, but you have up to 12 months to fix all those things. Like, that's a big deal. Things aren't always perfect. I know when I first built, I swear our dishwasher was a lemon. Like, he just kept doing stupid stuff. And finally I was like, they just replaced it because they were like, we're sick of dealing with this stupid dishwasher. So, but I didn't have to pay for it, which was good. So.
And I found most builders are reasonable about the home inspector, and they don't mind going over the detailed report and speaking to everyone. I think most builders have been really easy to work with on that, and they're like,
they don't want to come back.
Yeah,
they don't want to have to come back.
Right. Yeah. And the other thing I was thinking about is radon. It's very prevalent here. Like, the cool thing about new construction is they can just build it into the house. Like, they just put the daggone PVC pipe. They already, like, I am freaked out by that. And so like, that's an interesting thing, say in new construction world, we can just build that into the contract. Sometimes it's standard for the builder to put it in, but if not, you can bring it up and like, how much money is your, radon system to be put in? Like, it's just ventilation. It's a pipe and it's cheap money at the beginning.
So H.H. Hunt and Boone, they both rough it in. They will not mitigate though, and it's in their contract. So it's roughed in, and then my clients have all been okay. We'll just close, and then if we want to do the testing, we'll do it then. And
but the roughing in is the hardest part because it's like it has to be it's got to be built into the house, and the piping and all that stuff. So I think those are all just things that if I would be putting it on a fact sheet, so I can say, hey, if you're thinking new construction, here's a flyer on it, and here's some nice tips and strategies, right? Or here's if you ever do decide to kind of transition from resale to new construction, here's the value I add. Like, I would challenge you guys, like, we've got to step up our game on new construction, or the money, the commission, the negotiation, all the client, all that's going to slip through our fingers. And we're advocating the best for our clients anyway. So, and they're good builders, but their fiduciary is not to protect the consumer. And they know that, we know that, but the consumer doesn't sometimes translate the two together. So, well, man, I learned a lot. Anything else before we hop off? I know you guys are busy, productive. Brandon, yeah.
Just one quick thing, with the buyers that do kind of wander into the model homes without, their real estate professional with them, as the lenders, Brandon and I are getting a lot of calls, as they're in the home, up the prices and stuff. So as long as you're working with a good solid lender like, Brandon or myself, we're going to make sure that person is offering without you.
Thank you.
You're the first call you make after that.
Yeah, I got a question related to that. So a lot of builders will offer an incentive for using their preferred lender.
Yeah, I knew you were going to do that.
I was about to just hit on that.
And so
how is that not illegal, by the way? Can someone explain that to me?
So get their money elsewhere.
Good question.
What do y'all say is a good response for, as an agent, how I should speak to my client about that? And then, what do y'all think?
I think it's extremely important to get your lender involved up front if you do have your client looking at new construction, one, so they can prep for that as well. Because, it's tough, especially if they're offering a builder credit. How can you get your client to not accept that $5,000 or whatever it might be by going to their preferred, lender? That's tough to compete with, but sometimes we might be able to help them in price with monthly payment. It might be a little bit cheaper. Or honestly, we might know that preferred lender. We might work with them. So we're able to lay that up for you guys. So it's a very smooth transition from me to Mark Atkinson at H.H. Hunt. So that way they're still getting that Southern Trust pre-approval or Integrity or whoever, and then it's getting passed to the right person. So that way you're still having a successful experience for you and your client. I think that's super important. Now, I hate to get cut out of the picture when it comes to preferred lenders, but that's how it is. And I'm going to do everything I can to compete, but I know I'm not going to win every deal in that regards. And sometimes that lender or builder credit is just too tough not to pass up. And it's important for you all to, get your lender involved in that, to explain to them that it's okay. You still need to go work with Dan Mitchell. I might not be able to do this deal, but that's a great opportunity that you need to take. I'm sure Brandon's got some tricks up his sleeves as well. So I'll let him take it from there.
Well, that's a great point there. And, keep in mind, as the years go by, 10 years ago, we saw Ryan Home giving out free sunrooms, free basements, $20,000, $30,000 incentives. We definitely couldn't compete with that. But, now that they are coming down and you are seeing more, $5,000, $4,000 incentives, that stuff we compete with. And once we explain to the client, well, half that's coming from the builder, half that's coming from the lender. How about I just give
you're paying it through the rate,
allows us to put a little less
locked in there.
Yep.
Drives me crazy. So that's a good point. I think all that stuff, see, you guys have so much value and so much knowledge. We just need to, what is there a song? We need to tell the world about this. Yeah. So awesome. You guys are amazing at what you guys do. Thank you guys for spending your morning with us. And I guess we'll just keep on plugging on, sell some more new construction, I guess, right? All right. Well, thank you guys. and I'll see you guys later.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Drew.